The light in the star chamber of the Cathar Imperium was ancient, a soft, silver luminescence drawn from the captive heart of a singularity and refracted through crystalline walls that hummed with the slow, deep thrum of empire. It was a light that had witnessed the crowning of 100 emperors, the signing of treaties that bound nebulae together, and the silent declarations of wars that had scoured entire star systems from existence. Now, it illuminated a scene of profound and unnerving stillness. At the center of the vast, circular chamber, a hololith of impossible clarity projected a single, solitary point of light against a three-dimensional map of the known galaxy. The object was a phantom, a ghost in the grand, intricate machine of imperial sensor networks. Emperor Thrax, his form clad in ceremonial robes woven from solidified light, stood before the projection, his multifaceted eyes reflecting the tiny, errant star. His breathing was a slow, measured cadence that did not betray the disquiet coiling in his core. Beside him, two figures stood as stark contrasts in the imperial order. To his right was Warlord Grak of the Heckler, a being of obsidian carapace and barely contained kinetic energy, his posture a declaration of aggressive readiness. To his left, Archivist Lyra of the Xylan, her crystalline body a network of soft, internal light pulses, remained placid, her focus absolute. The silence was the fourth presence in the room, a heavy blanket of unspoken fear and calculation. For 3 rotations, this scene had held. The object had appeared without a ripple in spacetime, without the characteristic energy signature of a void drive entry, without any of the telltale signs of passage. It simply was. A mode of data in the sensorium where moments before there had been nothing. That was alarming enough. But what had turned alarm into a creeping dread that now echoed through the highest echelons of the Imperium was its behavior. The object was accelerating, not in the controlled bursts of a maneuvering vessel, but with a smooth, constant, and inexorable increase in velocity. It was gaining speed as if pulled by a force the Imperium's finest minds could not comprehend, aimed directly toward the core worlds. "It mocks us!" Warlord Grak's voice was a low growl, like continents grinding together. "It drifts into our sovereign territory, a dagger pointed at the heart of our stability, and offers no identity, no purpose. It is an act of supreme arrogance, an invasion in slow motion." He gestured with a clawed hand toward the hololith, the gesture sharp and violent. "We must answer it not with debate, but with fire. The 3rd and 5th fleets are within intercept range. A single command from the throne is all that is required to erase this anomaly before it becomes a verifiable threat." Archivist Lyra's form shimmered, her voice emerging not from a mouth, but as a series of perfectly modulated resonant frequencies that filled the air like music. "Fire is the tool of the fearful, Warlord. We are the Cathar Imperium. Our strength is not in our weapons alone, but in our understanding. We have no data. To destroy it would be to burn a library without ever reading a single scroll." Her crystalline gaze turned to the Emperor. "Your Radiance, the Grand Archive, contains no record of any vessel, any species, any technology that behaves in this manner. Its acceleration is pure. There is no detectable energy expenditure. No propellant, no wake, no distortion of the void. It violates the known principles of motive physics. This is not an act of aggression. It is a puzzle, a phenomenon. A phenomenon that will be a kinetic weapon of unimaginable power if it maintains its current trajectory and rate of gain," Grak countered, his mandibles clicking in agitation. "The archivist speaks of scrolls and libraries. I speak of planetary devastation. By the time it reaches the Thran system, its velocity will be such that no shield in the Imperial arsenal could withstand the impact. It would be an extinction-level event. Are we to wait until this puzzle annihilates a core world before we deem it a threat?" Emperor Thrax did not move. His mind was a maelstrom of possibilities, each one more unsettling than the last. He had ruled for centuries, guiding the Imperium through political schisms, resource crises, and the subtle wars of diplomacy. He had always prided himself on his measured approach, his ability to see the currents of causality flowing beneath the surface of events. But this was different. This was a void. A perfect absence of information. The ship, if it was a ship, was a manifestation of the unknown, and the unknown was the only true enemy of an empire built on the principle of absolute order. The Imperium's power was predicated on its mastery of knowledge. Every star, every species, every whisper of hyperspace was catalogued, analyzed, and filed within the Grand Archive. To be unknown was to be impossible. "Acceleration," Thrax said, his voice deep and resonant, holding the authority of his long reign. "Archivist, you say it is pure, elaborate." Lyra's internal light pulsed with focused intensity. "Your Radiance, a conventional drive, even our own void drives, operates by manipulating spacetime. It creates a gradient, a push, or a pull. This generates a signature, a wake, traceable, predictable. This object, it does not push, it does not pull. The universe simply seems to agree that it should be moving faster with every passing moment. Our finest chronometric sensors detect a temporal distortion around it, but it is a passive effect, not the cause. It is as if the laws of inertia are being rewritten in its immediate vicinity. It gains momentum from nothing. It is a physical paradox given form. The Emperor contemplated this. A weapon that defied physics was more terrifying than any fleet. But a vessel that operated on principles beyond their comprehension was a discovery that could reshape the foundations of their civilization. It was the ultimate gamble. Grak saw a threat to be eliminated. Lyra saw a mystery to be solved. And Thrax, he saw the fulcrum upon which the future of his Imperium might pivot. His gaze drifted from the single point of light to the swirling, majestic representation of his domain. Trillions of souls, 1,000 worlds, all bound by the mandate of stability he was sworn to uphold. Could he risk that stability for the sake of a cosmic curiosity? Could he afford not to? Warlord, Thrax said, his tone leaving no room for argument. You speak of destruction, but what if this vessel is not the weapon, but a messenger? What if it is a scout from a power so far beyond our own that they traverse the void by methods we cannot even theorize? To strike it without understanding would be to throw a stone at a giant, inviting an avalanche in return. We will not act in fear. Grak's carapace tightened, but he bowed his head in deference. And what of the threat? Do we simply watch it approach, a cosmic timepiece counting down to our doom? No, the Emperor replied, turning his full attention to the hololith. We will not be idle. We will act, but we will act with the mind of an empire, not the reflex of a predator. He looked at Lyra. Archivist, redouble your efforts. Scour the deepest, most forbidden archives. Look for myths, for fringe theories, for the mad scribblings of forgotten astronomers, any legend of a ghost ship or a silent traveler. There must be a pattern, however faint. He then turned to Grak. Warlord, you will dispatch the first Imperial fleet, not the third or the fifth, the first. I want our finest ships, our most disciplined crews, under the command of Fleetmaster Vorlag himself. His mandate will be threefold. First, intercept. Place a screen of our most powerful vessels in the object's path. Second, identify. Use every sensor, every probe, every analytical tool at his disposal to discern its nature and origin. Communication is to be attempted on all known frequencies and modes, from simple radio waves to telepathic resonance. Third, and only if the object proves unequivocally hostile, if it initiates an attack or refuses to divert its course from a direct collision with a populated world, only then is Fleetmaster Vorlag authorized to neutralize it. The tension in the chamber shifted. Grak's aggression was tempered by the gravity of the command. The First Fleet was the symbol of imperial power, a force rarely deployed in its entirety. Its presence would be a statement of supreme seriousness. Lyra's form pulsed with a calmer, more hopeful light. It was a measured response, a balance of caution and strength. It was the way of the Imperium. It will be done, Your Radiance, Grak affirmed, his voice now stripped of its earlier agitation, replaced by the cold efficiency of a soldier given a clear directive. Emperor Thrax continued to stare at the point of light, a tiny seed of chaos planted in the perfect garden of his empire. For all their power, for all their knowledge, for all the millennia of their dominance, they were staring into a darkness they could not penetrate. The ship continued its silent, impossible acceleration, oblivious to the storm of fear and strategy gathering in its wake. And for the first time in his long life, Emperor Thrax felt the profound, humbling weight of the infinite. The universe was vast, and it did not owe them its secrets. Fleetmaster Vorlag stood on the command deck of the Imperial Resolve Asterisk, the flagship of the First Fleet. The view screen was not a screen at all, but a seamless continuation of the void itself, a perfect projection of reality that wrapped around the armored amphitheater of the bridge. Before him, space glittered with the might of his command. Battle cruisers hung like jeweled daggers in the darkness, their hulls absorbing the light of a distant nebula. Carriers, vast as moons, disgorged swarms of reconnaissance drones that spread out like a fine sensor net. The combined energy signature of the fleet was a sun in its own right, a declaration of power that had made lesser civilizations tremble and surrender without a single shot fired. But their target did not tremble. It did not react at all. On the central tactical display, it was still just a point of light, a simple icon against the grid of spacetime. But now they were close enough for the fleet's advanced sensors to begin painting a clearer and far more disturbing picture. The reports flowed in from the various bridge stations, a chorus of controlled, professional disbelief. Gravimetric sensors are inconclusive, Fleetmaster, the science officer reported, his voice tight. There is a gravitational distortion consistent with an object of immense mass, far greater than its observed size would suggest, but there is no corresponding energy output. It's passively massive. Spectrometry is negative, another officer announced. The hull, or whatever passes for its outer surface, reflects no light, no radiation, no energy. It absorbs everything. We are painting it with every sensor band we have, and we are getting nothing back. It is a perfect black. Still no response to our hails, sir. We have broadcast the Imperial First Contact protocols on over 1,000 frequencies. We have sent mathematical constants, stellar charts, even biological base codes. There is only silence. Vorlag, a veteran of 100 campaigns, felt a prickle of unease he had not experienced since he was a young officer facing the mind-bending horrors of the Cygnus Vale. His instincts, honed by decades of command, screamed that something was fundamentally wrong. This was not the behavior of a conventional vessel. It was not a stealth ship, for it made no effort to hide its presence. It was not a warship, for it showed no signs of aggression. It was an enigma wrapped in a physical impossibility. "Magnify the image," Vorlag commanded, his voice a low baritone that cut through the quiet hum of the bridge. "Optical only, maximum resolution." The view screen shifted, the starfield rushing past as the ship's telescopes focused on the target. The point of light resolved into a shape. It was long and impossibly sleek, a perfect obsidian spindle without any discernible features. No windows, no weapon emplacements, no drive cones, no sensor arrays. It was utterly smooth, a seamless whole like a single piece of polished stone sculpted by a god. Its scale was immense, dwarfing his own flagship, and it was moving with a grace that belied its terrifying velocity. As they watched, a wave of consternation rippled through the bridge crew. The ship was not just moving, it was changing. Subtle, shimmering distortions played across its surface, not of light or energy, but of space itself. It was as if the fabric of the void was warping around it, flowing over its hull like water. "Chronometric variance is increasing," the science officer said, his tone bordering on awe. "Fleetmaster, the object is not flying through space in a conventional sense. The readings suggest it is pulling its destination toward it. The acceleration we are detecting is the wake of this process. It is a side effect of its method of travel. It's not a drive system. It's a reordering of reality." Vorlag felt the chill of that statement settle deep in his bones. This was technology far beyond the comprehension of the Imperium. To reorder reality, it was the power of creation, of existence itself. The Emperor's caution now seemed like profound wisdom. To fire upon such a vessel would not be throwing a stone at a giant. It would be like a microbe trying to attack the laws of physics. "It is approaching the final demarcation line," the tactical officer announced, his voice grim. "Beyond that point, its course will irrevocably intersect with the Thran system. Our orders stand. If it does not alter its trajectory, we are to treat it as hostile." The weight of his mandate pressed down on Vorlag. He was the sword of the Emperor, the guardian of the core worlds. His duty was clear. But every instinct, every piece of data screamed that this was a situation where duty and wisdom were in violent opposition. To follow his orders might be to commit an act of galactic folly, an error so profound it would be spoken of in whispers for millennia. "Prepare the forward lance cannons," he ordered, his voice heavy. "Target the object's leading edge. A warning shot. A precise, low-yield discharge, not to destroy, but to communicate our intent. Let us see if a direct application of energy can provoke a response where communication has failed." The fleet shifted, great vessels turning with ponderous grace to bring their primary weapons to bear. Energy conduits hummed, charging capacitors with the power of captive stars. On the bridge of the Imperial Resolve a targeting reticle settled over the image of the silent black ship. The tension was a palpable thing. A physical presence in the air. Every crew member held their breath, their gazes fixed on the view screen. "Cannons charged and ready, Fleetmaster," the weapons officer confirmed. Vorlag raised his hand, poised to give the command. The fate of his fleet, and perhaps the Imperium itself, rested on this single action. The silence stretched, thin and taut. He looked at the ship, a perfect void in the stardusted blackness, and felt as though he were looking into the eye of something truly ancient and powerful. And then, just as he was about to let his hand fall, a new light bloomed on the communications panel. It was not an Imperial frequency. It was a signal of impossible clarity, layered directly onto their primary command channel, bypassing all their encryption and security protocols as if they were not there. A voice spoke. It was not Cathar, nor any of the 100 other languages in the Imperial lexicon. And yet every being on the bridge understood it perfectly, the meaning translated directly into their conceptual consciousness. The voice was calm, measured, and carried a weight of immense weariness, like a traveler who had journeyed for an eternity. "This is Captain Elias Vance of the United Earth ship Odyssey," the voice said. "We acknowledge your presence. We ask that you stand down your weapons. We mean you no harm. Our course is set, and it cannot be altered." The bridge of the asterisk Imperial Resolve was plunged into an absolute stunned silence. The name was meaningless. United Earth? It did not exist in any star chart, any archive. The Grand Archive, the repository of all Cathar knowledge, was silent on this name. But the message itself was a thunderclap. It was a confirmation of intelligent life, of a civilization so advanced its voice could slip through their defenses like a ghost, and it was a rejection of their authority. "Our course is set, and it cannot be altered." It was not a plea. It was a statement of fact. Vorlag slowly lowered his hand. The immediate threat of conflict had passed, but it was replaced by a new, more profound sense of dread and wonder. He had been sent to confront an anomaly, a phantom. Instead, he had found a voice in the dark. "Open a channel," Vorlag commanded, his own voice sounding strained to his ears. "All frequencies, unencrypted. Let the entire Imperium hear this." He stepped forward, his gaze locked on the obsidian ship. "This is Fleetmaster Vorlag of the Cathar Imperial First Fleet. We have you on a collision course with a populated star system. Explain your intentions, or we will be forced to defend our territory." There was a pause, a moment of silence that felt longer than an age. The crew on the bridge exchanged nervous glances. They were in uncharted territory now, their protocols and procedures rendered obsolete by this calm, implacable voice. Then the voice of Captain Elias Vance returned, still imbued with that strange, ancient calm. "Fleetmaster Vorlag, your concern is understandable, but your understanding of our travel is incomplete. We are not on a collision course. The system you refer to as Thran is not in our path. From your perspective, our trajectory appears linear. From ours, it is not." A new stream of data flooded the asterisk Imperial Resolve's asterisk computers. It was not an attack, not a virus, but an invitation. A complex set of astrometric equations and theoretical physics that made the science officer's mandibles go slack with astonishment. "Fleetmaster, my emperor," the science officer stammered, his professional composure shattering. This is a four-dimensional flight plan. They are not traveling asterisk through asterisk our space. They are charting a course asterisk around asterisk it, using a higher spatial dimension. The Thran system is an obstacle they are already bypassing. The collision you fear is a three-dimensional shadow, an illusion created by our limited perception. They will pass it by without ever truly being there. Vorlag struggled to process the information. It was as if a two-dimensional being, seeing the shadow of a bird passing overhead, assumed the bird was on a collision course with its flat world, unable to comprehend the concept of a third dimension, of up. The Cathar Imperium, for all its might, had just been revealed as flatlanders in a universe far more complex than they had ever imagined. The captain's voice returned, a soft, almost gentle tone that seemed to understand their shock. "We cannot alter our course because our journey is a delicate one, a continuous process. To stop would be to unravel the very fabric of spacetime we have so carefully woven. We have traveled for a very long time, Fleetmaster, and we have much further to go." Vorlag stood humbled before the void. The order to neutralize the threat was now utterly meaningless. How could he attack a shadow? How could he fight a vessel that was, for all intents and purposes, in another plane of existence? He had come with the might of an empire at his back, and he had been met not with defiance, but with a quiet, devastating truth about his own civilization's limitations. "Captain Vance," Vorlag said, his voice now devoid of any threat, filled only with a profound, burning curiosity. "Who are you? Where is this United Earth?" The pause that followed was different. It was not for calculation. It felt reflective, sad. "Earth is no more," the voice of Vance replied, and for the first time a trace of emotion entered his tone. A deep, resonant grief that echoed across the stars. "It is a memory, a ghost. We are all that is left of it, and we are not conquerors or explorers in the way you might understand. We are librarians. We carry a legacy, not just our own, but that of all the silent voices we have found in the dark." The puzzle was shifting, its pieces rearranging to form a picture not of menace, but of something far more complex and poignant. The accelerating ship was not a weapon. It was an ark, and its crew were not invaders. They were ghosts. The star chamber was no longer silent. It was filled with the clear, calm voice of the human captain, Elias Vance, whose image was now projected opposite Emperor Thrax. The transmission was a marvel in itself, a perfect, stable connection across an impossible distance, piped directly from the asterisk Odyssey asterisk to the heart of the Imperium. The human appeared as a simple, two-dimensional image, yet it held more weight than any of the gilded statues that lined the chamber. He was a male of his species, his features strangely soft and symmetrical, his eyes holding a depth that seemed to absorb the ancient light of the room. He wore a simple, dark uniform devoid of any rank or ostentation. His posture was relaxed, yet utterly composed. Emperor Thrax, Warlord Grak, and Archivist Lyra listened, their entire beings focused on the words of this impossible messenger. The initial shock had subsided, replaced by a rapt, almost reverent attention. The story Vance told was not a report or a diplomatic overture. It was a eulogy for a world. Our star was dying, Vance explained, his voice a steady, low current. Not in the explosive death of a supernova, but in a slow, quiet fading, a natural end to a long life. Our civilization had reached a point where we could have escaped, scattered to the nearest stars, and begun anew. Many did, but we, the architects of the Odyssey project, chose a different path. We had looked out into our galaxy, into the great silence, and we had found ghosts. He gestured, and the image beside him shifted. It showed ancient ruins on desolate moons, fossilized remains buried deep within asteroids, faint, degraded radio signals that whispered of civilizations long turned to dust. We found evidence of countless species, countless cultures that had risen and fallen long before our sun had even formed. They had lived, they had dreamed, they had built, and they had vanished, leaving behind only the faintest of echoes. The universe, we realized, was a graveyard of forgotten stories. Archivist Lyra's crystalline form pulsed with a soft, empathetic light. This was a concept that resonated with her very core, the sanctity of knowledge, of memory. So we built the arcs, Vance continued. Not just to save ourselves, but to save them. The Odyssey is not merely a vessel for our people. It is a library. We gathered every fragment of data, every piece of art, every philosophical text, every genetic code we could recover. We became custodians of the silent. Our mission is not to colonize, but to preserve, to carry the memory of all life we can find so that the universe does not forget itself. Warlord Grak stood utterly still, his warrior's instincts confused. He was prepared for a threat, for an enemy to be measured and defeated. He was not prepared for this. This purpose was so far beyond the concepts of territory and conquest that it rendered his entire worldview irrelevant. There was no honor in fighting a memory. There was no glory in destroying a library. This was a form of power he could not comprehend, a power derived not from force but from reverence. Your method of travel, Emperor Thrax said, his voice filled with a new respect. It is a key to this mission. It allows you to traverse the vast distances required. It is, Vance affirmed. We call it the reality fold drive. It took centuries to perfect. It does not move the ship through space. It moves space around the ship. We create a localized, self-contained fold in the universal fabric, and we pull our destination toward us. It is a slow process from the outside, hence your observation of our constant acceleration. But for us, within the fold, time and distance are malleable. It allows us to make journeys that would otherwise take millions of years. His eyes seemed to look past the Emperor into the long, dark road ahead. Our journey is not measured in distance, but in ages. The sheer scale of the concept was staggering. A civilization that could manipulate the wide geometry of the cosmos. A people who, faced with their own extinction, chose not to conquer, but to remember. The Cathar Imperium, which had defined its greatness by the number of systems it controlled, was now faced with a species that defined its greatness by the number of stories it saved. You said Earth is no more, Emperor Thrax stated, his voice softening. You are refugees, then, adrift. Vance offered a small, sad smile. We are not adrift, your radiance. We have a destination. There is a place at the very edge of this galaxy where the flow of time is different. A gravitational anomaly, a nexus where we can create a permanent sanctuary. A place where our library can be safe, where the memories we carry can endure for eons. That is where the asterisk Odyssey is bound. The image of the human captain was that of a being both immensely powerful and profoundly vulnerable. His people commanded a technology that could make them gods among the stars, yet they used it to serve the dead. They were not conquerors. They were priests tending a silent, universal cathedral of memory. Why reveal this to us? Warlord Grak finally spoke, his voice rough but stripped of its earlier hostility. You could have passed us by, a silent mystery. Your technology is so far beyond ours, we could not have stopped you. We could not have even understood you. Why speak? Vance's gaze shifted to the warlord, and there was no judgment in his eyes, only a deep, weary understanding. Because you prepared to fire upon us. We have a non-interference directive. We observe, we record, but we do not engage. But that directive is superseded when we are faced with an existential threat. We did not speak to prove our superiority. We spoke so that you would not make a mistake you would regret for the rest of your history. We spoke to prevent you from staining your hands with the ashes of a billion forgotten worlds. The weight of that statement settled in the star chamber. Grak's earlier call to arms, his desire to destroy the anomaly, now seemed like the ignorant rage of a child. He had advocated for an act that would have been a sacrilege of galactic proportions. He lowered his great head, a gesture of profound shame and humility. Archivist Lyra's resonance, however, was one of pure, unadulterated awe. A library of 1 billion worlds, she vibrated, the concept almost too vast for her to contain. The Grand Archive of the Cathar is the most complete record of life in this galactic quadrant, and it holds the histories of barely 1,000 species. What you are doing, it is the most noble purpose I have ever encountered. Emperor Thrax looked from his advisors to the image of the human. He saw the path forward, a path that had been invisible only hours before. The Cathar Imperium had reached the apex of its power. It had grown stagnant, its primary concern being the maintenance of the status quo, the preservation of its own stability. It had forgotten the wonder of the unknown, seeing it only as a threat. These humans, these quiet librarians, had reminded them of the sheer, humbling scale of the cosmos. "Captain Vance," the Emperor began, his voice imbued with the full weight of his authority and newfound understanding. "Your mission is a sacred one. The Cathar Imperium was founded on the principle of order and the preservation of knowledge. Our paths, it seems, are more aligned than we could have ever imagined. You are not an anomaly to be feared. You are a revelation." He paused, letting the significance of his next words fill the space between them. "The Cathar Imperium formally recognizes the sovereignty of the United Earth Ship Odyssey. We will not hinder your passage. On the contrary, we would be honored to assist you." Vance's calm expression finally flickered with surprise. "Assist us. Your radiance, we require nothing." "You require safe passage," Thrax corrected. "This quadrant of the galaxy is not entirely tame. There are pirates, rogue states, cosmic hazards not on any of your ancient charts. The First Fleet under Fleetmaster Vorlag will be your honor guard. They will escort you to the edge of our territory, ensuring that no one and nothing disturbs your vital mission. It is the least we can do to atone for our initial lack of understanding." He glanced at Grak, who nodded in solemn agreement. A long silence followed. The human captain, Elias Vance, seemed to be considering the offer, his deep eyes searching the Emperor's visage. He was not assessing a threat, but the sincerity of a promise. Finally, he gave a slow, respectful nod. "Your offer is generous, Emperor Thrax, and it is accepted. We have traveled in solitude for so long, the concept of an escort is a foreign one. But your gesture is one of profound peace. We will not refuse it." A sense of immense, historic relief washed through the star chamber. A potential conflict of unimaginable consequence had been averted and transformed into the beginning of a friendship. A meeting of two vastly different civilizations based on a shared, higher purpose. The point of light that had been a symbol of fear was now a beacon of hope, of a universe far richer and more meaningful than they had ever known. The Imperium had been reminded that the greatest power was not in ruling the present, but in preserving the past. But as the diplomatic arrangements were being made, as the First Fleet began to reorient itself from a blockade to an honor guard, Captain Vance's expression grew somber once more. There was a final piece of his story yet to be told, a shadow that lay behind the noble mission of his arc. "Emperor Thrax," Vance said, his voice dropping slightly, drawing them all in with a new sense of gravity. "There is something else you must know. The reason for our mission, the reason we built the arcs and developed the Fold drive with such desperate urgency, it was not just our dying sun. That was merely a catalyst. The true impetus was something else, a discovery we made in the final decades of our time in our home system." The atmosphere in the star chamber grew tense again, but this was a different kind of tension. It was not the fear of an external threat, but the shared stillness of listening to a terrible secret. "Our deep space observatories, looking far beyond our own galaxy, detected a pattern," Vance continued, his voice low and serious. "A signal embedded in the cosmic microwave background radiation. It was not a message. It was not a communication. It was a metronome, a rhythmic, repeating pulse of energy that emanated from the intergalactic void. And when we analyzed its periodicity, we discovered a terrifying correlation." He brought up a new image. It was a simulation of galactic clusters, showing waves of energy sweeping through them on a vast, cosmic timescale. "The pulse corresponds to a cycle of extinction. Every few 100 million years this signal appears, and shortly thereafter, galaxies in the affected region go dark, not all at once but systematically. Advanced civilizations vanish, biospheres collapse. It is a methodical, recurring event, a harvest, a culling. We do not know its source, we do not know its purpose. We only know that it is coming." The Emperor stared at the simulation, at the silent, sweeping waves of annihilation. The political squabbles of his imperium, the territorial disputes, the centuries of carefully managed stability, all of it felt like the blissful ignorance of children playing in a garden, unaware of the approaching winter. The decay of our sun, Vance said, his voice barely a whisper, was not entirely natural. We believe its process was accelerated by the leading edge of this phenomenon. It was our first and only warning. We are not just running from a dead star, your radiance. We are running from that pulse. We are trying to outrun the great silence that follows it. Our library is not just a monument to the past. It is a desperate hope that life's story will survive the coming night. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place, and the picture it revealed was one of cosmic, existential horror. The Asterisk Odyssey wasn't just gaining speed. It was fleeing a doom that was coming for them all. The humans were not just librarians. They were heralds of a darkness that the Cathar, in all their power and wisdom, had never even known to fear. In the star chamber, the ancient light seemed to dim. Emperor Thrax looked at the hololith, at the symbol of the human ship now flanked by the icons of his own imperial fleet. What had begun as a crisis of an unknown object had become a shared burden, a sudden, terrifying alliance against a foe they could not see, could not comprehend. Humanity, the mysterious newcomers, had arrived not as a threat, but as the bearers of a terrible truth. They had come to warn them that the universe was not empty, it was merely between cycles of being emptied. The Emperor looked at the image of Elias Vance, this calm, weary traveler from a dead world, and he saw not an alien but a brother, a fellow soul standing on the precipice of an unimaginable abyss. The age of the Cathar Imperium's solitary reign was over. A new age was dawning, an age of shared knowledge, shared purpose, and a shared, terrifying future in a universe far older, far larger, and far more dangerous than they had ever dreamed. And they would face it together.